This is E&P Reports, a service of Editor and Publisher magazine. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And sponsored this week by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide are asking the same question. How do we accelerate the growth of consumer revenue? Traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way, costing you money. IQ Audience Plus by Town News is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers you to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Ready to supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income? Visit townnews.com/EP today to learn more about IQ Audience Plus. And greetings once again. I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. If you're perceiving value from our weekly vodcast series, E&P Reports, by all means, subscribe to the podcast channel you're on now. And if you're watching the video version on YouTube, I urge you to go below the screen and quickly just click that subscribe button. There's a little bell to the right. If you click that as well, you will be alerted each and every time we upload a new segment of E&P Reports. Ambassador Raymond Joseph, a name you may not be familiar with, but if you do Google him and go to his Wikipedia page, you will see that he started his journalism career in the early 60s at the Wall Street Journal. Raising the funds from there in the early 70s, he founded the Haiti Observateur, based out of Brooklyn, New York, published in 3 languages and read worldwide. Between 2004 and 2010, he was the Haitian ambassador to the United States. And during the earthquake of 2010, for 3 solid days, he was essentially the functioning government of the country, since no one could be reached in Port-au-Prince. And if you want to have some real in-depth knowledge of what was as like during those turbulent years, you should read his autobiography, For Who the Dogs Spy. It's just an amazing story, an incredible life dedicated to basically press freedom and, more importantly, making sure the truth is told, and if I can be so bold, telling the truth to power. Please stick around for the next 35 minutes. I think you're going to find Ambassador Joseph a refreshing, wonderful voice on this segment of E&P Reports. Ambassador Joseph, thank you so much for your valuable time today. I do call you ambassador, right? Once you have that position, it stays with you forever. Am I correct, sir?
Yes, just like senator and president.
There you go. And not publisher. If I leave E&P, I lose that title. So you have that one for life. Before we discuss your illustrious career, sir, I would like to first focus in on the newspaper. Because, you know, E&P is about news publishing, the news industry. And I found you through the, I'm going to try to say this correctly, Haiti Observateur. Did I say that correct, sir?
That's correct.
Widely
if you want to be a real Frenchman, you say Haiti Observateur.
That doesn't translate too well. But the Haiti Observateur is published in 3 languages, correct? In the same publication, Haitian Creole, French, and English. It is published out of Brooklyn, New York. You found it with your brother. Is that correct?
That is correct. My brother Leo.
Mm-hmm. And you now still write for it. Does he still run the magazine, the newspaper?
My brother Leo runs the paper, and he has been running it alone since 2004, when I went to take over the embassy in Washington.
Okay.
But since I was the co-founder and the financier, really, I still have my rights to write as many articles as I want.
In which language, sir? All 3?
I write every week. I write 1 column in Creole called Grain Promené. And Grain Promené is like, you know, walking all over the place, looking at everything. and then I write a column in English, Happenings, in which I tell my readers most of what I think is happening in Haiti. This is not what I think, but what's happening in Haiti. And then a third column in French called Nouvelle Brève. That's the last column I write every week. That's the brief news, the latest news.
And you write that in French?
Yes, that's in French.
Okay.
Then I adapt the editorial that my brother writes in French. I adapt it in English. I say adapt. I don't translate really.
Now, obviously, when you started the magazine in the the newspaper, in the early 70s, its distribution was print-based. So it was being
Yes,
shipped.
in fact, the paper started 23rd July 1971.
And I want to establish this as we're going to go back into your history in a moment. You established this almost like a radio-free Haiti. You wanted to have a free voice for a country at the time that was under a dictatorship. So you published it in New York, but somehow that paper was distributed in Haiti, Canada, and Europe, right? Everybody was reading it in New York.
First of all, the paper, you should know, was the continuation of the radio broadcast. We had a radio broadcast from New York that we started in 1965.
Okay.
And when we could no longer have the radio broadcasts because policy changed in America with President Nixon coming in, and he embraced the dictator in Haiti, even sent Rockefeller to Haiti, who had a big time with Papa Doc Duvalier on the 4th of July, 1969. Then I told my friends in New York, I don't think we'll be able to have this broadcast here for a long time. In America, broadcast needs government permission.
Yeah, the FCC.
But newspapers don't.
That's right.
So from then on, I told them, let's try to work toward having a newspaper. So my brother went to study how to run a weekly newspaper. And by 1970, February 1970, I joined the Wall Street Journal. And by 1971, I had made enough money to launch our paper, and my brother ran it.
But this is crazy.
That's the story.
They're so ironic because what you are saying now is under the Republican regime of Nixon sending Nelson Rockefeller down to kind of pal around with Papa Doc. I mean, François Papa Doc Duvalier was a vicious dictator. We all know that. We know the history of Haiti at that time. But you saw a Republican administration, and I'm not saying Republican, that immediately wanted to pal up to this guy. You were going to lose your voice through the FCC. So here's what's hilarious. You used Wall Street Journal money to start the newspaper, and the Wall Street Journal would favor the Republican side at the time, I'm assuming. So there you go.
Yeah, but when I joined the Wall Street Journal, the editor told me, "You're not going to write politics for us.
No.
we have an industrial beat. Will you cover it?" I said, "I need money. Yes, I would cover it." However, what I did to the Wall Street Journal, I say, if you give me a reporter that I can trust, and they gave me a reporter I could trust, that was Stanley Penn. Stanley Penn was a Pulitzer Prize winner. And I gave him some contacts in Haiti. And Stanley Penn went to Haiti and did some stories for the Wall Street Journal. And when he came back, he told them, "Look, whatever Ray give you about Haiti, take it." Really? He has the contacts. Anyway, one thing that happened finally, I wrote about politics for the Wall Street Journal, was in 1970, when I joined in February 1970. And in April 1971, Papa Doc is going to die. So I go see my editor and I say, Papa Doc is dead. He said, "Oh, they have not announced it yet." I said, "Well, they're waiting for the 22nd of April because Papa Doc did everything on the 22nd. That was his lucky number." He even said he killed JFK on November 22nd, 1963. He took that. That day he had a big fiesta at the palace because Kennedy really was against him. Anyway, I told my editor that, and he said, you don't think I'm going to publish that story?" I said, "No, I'm telling you. So when they have the announcement on the 22nd, you will have a good story. Put a reporter on the story right now. Anyway, not wanting to lose the power that I thought I had, I called my friend at the time at the Washington Daily News.
Okay.
You remember Washington Daily News?
I do. Yes. I lived
Anyway,
in
Washington Daily News was operating, and I had a friend there that I used to give some tips to. I called her. I said, "Look, you know Papa Doc is dead, and they're waiting for the 22nd to announce it." I said that about the 19th to her. She said, "Ray, you never lied to me about anything. I'm going to find a way to put it out." So she put out the story. I think it was on the 20th. Papa Doc is dead, according to a source that never lies to me.
You were the source.
They're waiting for
You
the
were
22nd.
you were the deep throat of that situation.
I was the deep throat.
Yes.
And I said, and she wrote, and they're waiting for the 22nd to announce it and to have his son as president for life, and us as president for life. That story went out. And then on the 22nd, all the news all over, Papa Doc is dead.
There you go.
It's 7 a.m. in the morning, and I get a call from my editor, and he said, "Ray, are you up yet?" I said, "Yes, I'm up." He said, "Have you listened to 1010 News?" 1010 News is the radio station in New York that gives news around the
WINS. I'm very familiar with it. Yes, yes.
And so he said, "Have you heard 1010 News?" I said, "No, not yet." He said, "Well, 1010 News is announcing Papa Doc's death." I said, "That's not news for me." He said, "That's exactly it. You give me goose pimple because you told me about that 2 or 3 days ago." I said, "Well, I know what I'm talking about."
You were the first source. Well, obviously, let's put some perspective to our audience. Please, if you have a moment, find Haiti Observateur online. You will see an amazing, wonderful weekly newspaper that has become a voice for the country of Haiti. But let's now let's go through your background, and we could go on for hours on this, sir.
Okay, but
Ambassador Joseph.
Before I go,
yes,
you told them to look for Haiti Observateur. They have to do Haiti-Observateur in French, TEUR .ca.
.ca.
That's how they'll find it.
Just go to Google and type it in and you'll find it anyway, but that's good. You were born in 1931. You are 89 years old, and your wife and you are still spry, and you're still active, and you're still doing everything. You were born in Haiti.
No, in the Dominican Republic.
That's right. Your father was Haitian working in the Dominican Republic. Your Wikipedia page is huge. And there was a battle about your citizenship, correct? If you don't mind me asking.
Well, you see, the Dominicans don't give Haitians the birth certificate. And so I didn't have a birth certificate in the Dominican Republic. I got my birth certificate when I was a grown man in Haiti.
Okay.
And later on, this will turn against the Dominicans, because when I started to work for the Wall Street Journal and they allowed me to start writing about the Caribbean, I wrote some stories about the Dominican Republic. And they said, well, this person knows so much. So the Consul General in New York invited me to his office. And he says, I carried out some investigation. I found out you were born in the Dominican Republic, and the Dominican Republic is ready to give you your citizenship. And I said, well, I'm sorry. When I was 18, I chose Haiti. So I'm Haitian. I'm sorry, I cannot change now.
So they both wanted you.
By that time, they wanted me.
Yeah.
This thing went on when I became ambassador. When I became ambassador in Washington, the Dominican ambassador came after I was there. So he was sort of a junior to me. And whenever I got there, he sat by me. He always tried to sit by me and ask me something question about certain people. And then he enjoyed telling people, the other diplomats, this one is one of us, this is one of us. He was born in our country.
Everybody was pulling at you, wanting you. But let's take this in steps. So, all right, you're in the Caribbean. You come to the United States, but you came to study, basically. Correct me if I'm wrong. Based on your Wikipedia page, to join the clergy, correct? I mean, you originally came here to study to become a minister. Am I right or wrong? Or why did you come to
You
the
are right.
Yes.
I registered in the pastor's course at the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago.
That's right. Yes.
But I did not take the pastor's course because I wanted to be a pastor like my dad. My dad was a pastor.
Your dad was a
I
pastor.
took the pastor's course because that's the one that gave Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic. And I wanted to study the biblical languages because when I left Haiti, my goal was to have the Bible in the language of the people of Haiti.
Because it wasn't available in Creole at the time?
It was not available in Creole, it was in French. And very often I had heard some of preachers who were not very learned read the Bible in French and then try to interpret it in Creole. And the interpretations sometimes were not quite correct.
If you think about that, the Bible, we're talking the 1960s now, and the Bible had still not been translated into every language. There was no version in Haitian Creole. So those that only could speak that or read that could not experience the Bible, correct? And that was your mission?
No, the Bible was not in Creole until I did the first New Testament translation that came out in 1960, November 1960, under the aegis of the American Bible Society. That was the first Word of God in the language of the Haitians, the New Testament with Psalms. And it remained the only translation for 20 years until the Biblia, the Bible, came out in 1984.
Which translation is read more in Haiti, in your humble opinion? Yours or the Biblia translation?
No, right. I'm quite sure Biblia is read more.
Okay, it's read more.
That one was the first, and then it was only the New Testament, the Psalms. Now Biblia is fully Creole, and it's New Testament and Old Testament, everything.
All right, I want to fast forward now. You're in Chicago. You were studying to be a pastor only to learn Aramaic and Greek and Hebrew. So now you're learning those languages. You're translating a Bible. How did you become the ambassador to Haiti? How did you get into this political world? Ambassador from Haiti, excuse me, to the US. Give us the tour. Where did you go and how did that all happen, sir?
Well, after I finished the Moody Bible Institute and the American Bible Society Secretary General, Dr. Eugene Nida, went to Haiti to look for someone to do the translation of the Bible. Mm-hmm. And people who knew that I was studying in America told him the young man who's interested in that is in Chicago. So he came to Chicago my graduating year and hired me to do the work I was preparing me to do without knowing how I was going to do it. So after the Bible translation work, the New Testament was terminated, I came back to the United States in 1961 to go to University of Chicago.
Right.
By the way, before University of Chicago, after I left Moody, I attended Wheaton College in social anthropology, and I graduated with a BA. And then I went on to University of Chicago with the BA from Wheaton, and I got credit. And I got into the MA program in social anthropology and linguistics. I finished my MA, graduated, and then I started my PhD. For the PhD program, my thesis was accepted. And for anthropology, for social anthropology, I had to do field work. I did my field work in British Guyana at the time. Today is Guyana. And I came back, I began to write, and on 12 November 1964, something happened that changed my life. Papa Doc Duvalier took two young men, Marcel Numa and Louis Douin. Their names will remain with me forever.
Yes.
These were two of the 13 guerrilla guys who left from New York and tried to start a revolution like Castro did in Cuba. Well, they were all killed. But those two, Marcel Numa and Louis Douin, were captured. And on 12 November 1964, Papa Doc had a fiesta in Haiti. He had all the schools closed, all government offices closed, and children, pupils, I'm not saying students, pupils,
Young
children,
children, yes.
young children were brought to the cemetery to watch the execution of these two young men.
Wow.
Papa Doc was sending a message to the whole society, even the kids, that this is what will happen to you if you stand up against me. I was at the University of Chicago at the time. I said, my place is not here anymore. I dropped my PhD program and I came to New York with money that we had been saving for the past 4 years. I came in 61, and from 61 to 65, a group of us, Haitian, especially Haitian medical doctors who had fled Duvalier, who lived in Chicago, we had set up a fund for what we wanted to do.
Which was
And
the radio station, right? This is what you said. Yes.
And in 1964, we had $50,000. That's in 1964, $50,000. My son did the figuring out for me, and he said it's $400,000 in today's
money. And this is interesting.
We took that money and came to New York and got on a radio station, Radio New York Worldwide. Was that station belonged to the Mormon Church. At the time, they were selling time to the Cubans, anti-Castro Cubans. And we bought time there. We bought a half hour.
You got a half hour because they were already anti-Castro. In that half hour, you became anti-Duvalier.
Exactly.
Because it was a similar situation, a dictatorship in that country, and you wanted to get the free word out, how the people were being oppressed. So now you're in New York in 1965. You're trying to get the word out about what's really happening in Haiti. And that was a democratic regime, right? We're talking LBJ. Do I have that right? Did I miss out?
Yes, it was LBJ.
Were you having contact with our State Department? Were you working with the United States on this, or were you on your own?
Here's what happened. When we left Chicago and we came and we got the contact with the radio, I have to say, at the time, a young man, no longer a young man, but a grown man called Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, yes.
Who was fighting communism and with whom I had contact through the Christian anti-communism crusade, helped me with contacts at the radio station.
Ronald Reagan helped you with this radio station.
Yeah, Reagan
so it's not Democrat first. It's not Democrat versus Republican. It's simply whatever mindset the president had towards the specific culture.
But you see, at that time, Reagan was not president.
Right.
However, we knew each other from our fight against communism.
Of course.
And when he heard what I wanted to do against a dictator in Haiti, which is paving the way for communism, that's how I explain it. I used to lecture in the 1960s about that. I said that Batista in Cuba had paved the way for Castro. And in Haiti, Duvalier, François Duvalier, Papa Doc, is paving the way for another Castro in Haiti.
Of course.
We have to fight that and come with a group that fight for democracy.
Now, Ronald Reagan at the time was governor of California, correct?
He was not yet.
Not yet, okay. But
he had his farm.
He was still politically active.
He was down there.
Okay. This is when he was running the Screen Actors Guild then, or in California. Okay, fine. So now Ronald Reagan is giving you some access to some of the U.S. influence. Your radio station is flourishing. Then you've already made it clear that when Nixon finally got into office, for some reason, he wanted to kind of just whitewash the whole situation. I got it. Why? What was in it for Nixon to keep Papa Doc comfortable? What was that all about?
Papa Doc was quite shrewd. He said he was the most powerful anti-communist in the region. So he used anti-communism.
The enemy of my
everything.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend, regardless of how he's treating the population, and he thought that he could use that as a leverage against Castro. I get it.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what he did.
Not that that's good politics, but you never want to watch how they make a sausage. You don't want to watch how they make Chinese food, and you don't want to know how deals are cut in Washington sometimes. But so this made you upset, obviously, because the people were being oppressed, murdered. You're trying to get the word out. Now, on your Wikipedia page, it states that Papa Doc hated you so much, and you're New York based, that he sent assassins to New York to get you. This was documented. Is this correct? And
that's documented. Anyway, they did not know how we did our work in Haiti. Once we began the radio station, we had what we call Bureau Central, a central office in Port-au-Prince, underground.
Underground, of course. No one knew how to. Yeah. You had sources that no one knew. You were getting
no, and they would not find them because the two guys who had at the office were two dead men in furlough, because they were in a list of people that Duvalier had sent to execute, and they came back with the list with a cross over it, meaning those people were no longer alive. But as we say in Creole, even in hell, there are friends. And some friends had warned them what was happening. So before the executioners arrived where they were, they had left already and they disappeared. So Papa Doc was not looking for them. These were the two guys who set up a central office, two dead men on furlough.
Dead men on furlough, okay.
Yes, and they are giving us information of what's happening in Haiti. Let me tell you one thing. The day that Duvalier slapped his wife at night in his bedroom, and 2 days later, he's hearing all about it on radio in New York.
You had sources that close to Duvalier. You knew what was going on in his bedroom. Is that what you're telling me?
That's what I'm telling you. When that happened,
this had to piss him off. I mean,
but for your own information, now it's all gone. I'll tell you how it happened.
You can now, yeah.
There was no cell phone by then.
No.
But there was telephone. And the telephone line that went from the palace to the Papa Doc's top, what I would call bodyguard. Mm-hmm. His name was Gracia Jacques. That telephone line passed over our central office. And the two guys, the dead and fallers, arranged with their contact at the telephone company, they tapped that line. Oh, and the night that Papa Doc slapped his wife, Simone was her name. Simone called the bodyguard to complain about what Duvalier did to her. And our Bureau Central was listening to the whole conversation. And they let me know right away in New York what happened. So the next day,
you're reporting the story.
He was on the radio. So Papa Doc now became really paranoid because we were in his own bedroom and he doesn't know how we got there. They tore down all the refrigerators in the palace looking for our bugs.
Looking for bugs and
all the curtains of the palace looking for our bugs. They never found them.
He never knew you were just tapping the phone line. We got to continue because we could spend hours in just one segment of your life. All right. So we now know that, the Nixon administration decided to, give Papa Doc a pass. Then you had to turn your radio station into a news operation that was in print because, again, you didn't need FCC guidance to have any broadcast. How did you then advance? Let's assume we now know Papa Doc died, change in regime. How did you become the ambassador to the United States from Haiti? And give us that timeline. What year was that? I think it was 2004.
The first time they called on me was in 1990.
Okay.
In 1990, that's when they had the first woman president, Madame Herta Pascal Trouillot. Madame Trouillot was looking for somebody who knew Washington well. And some people told her, one of them was one of the former head of the Central Bureau, the dead man on fellow, who told her, your man is in New York.
Your man is in New York.
and he's Raymond Joseph. She invited me to Haiti. I met her, and she said, they told me, she said, you are the famous Raymond Joseph I've been hearing about all those years. I need somebody to help me in Washington. And I asked her, what do you want to do, Madam President? She said, I want to have elections within a year.
Wow.
I said, okay, I can help you. And I left Haiti and I came to Washington. That was March 1990. And I worked with the Organization of American States and the State Department. And we sent observers to Haiti to have the first democratic elections on 31 December 1990.
That must have made you
16,
feel. That must have made you feel.
December.
You must have felt so proud that day.
Yes,
You must have been. Your life's work was finally accomplished. You were helping move that country into free and fair elections and the ability to have a country governed by the people.
Yes.
President at the time in 1990 was Ronald Reagan, correct?
Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
No, it was Bush. It was
Bush one.
It was Bush father.
Yes, Bush one. He had the one term. So he, like Ronald Reagan, was still anti-communist. You had a good in there.
But pro democracy.
Pro democracy. So you had a good in there now because you had already, Ronald Reagan respected you. You have Bush now. Did you meet Bush? Did you go to the White House? Did you do any?
Of course, I had to present my credentials to Bush. I presented my credentials to two Bushes. Father Bush in 1990 and to son Bush when I came back in 2004.
Oh my word.
Because, after I left the embassy in 1991, I went back to the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2004, when they had problems in Haiti again, they called me to take over the embassy. This time I went in, I chargé d'affaires in 2004. And in 2005, I became full ambassador, presented my credentials to President Bush, George W. Bush Jr.
Yes.
And I have my picture with him, with my whole family at the White House.
Oh, wow.
I'm very proud of that picture.
All right, let me turn now to 2010. This is a year most of us remember because the devastation in Haiti due to the earthquake in 2010 was massive. It has never been, possibly one of the worst ever. I mean, the entire country became completely, totally immobilized. You are in Washington, D.C. The country goes through an earthquake. You must have flipped out. What did you do? Could you get through to the president? Could you get through to anybody in Port-au-Prince? Could you talk to anybody at all? What was it like then? Because we couldn't even get a report out of there, if you remember. It was so difficult.
Yes. The first thing I should tell you is that the State Department calls me around 4:55, 2 or 3 minutes after the earthquake hits. And they ask me, Ambassador, do you know what happened to your country? I said, no. He says, an earthquake 7.0 magnitude just destroyed the place. I said, really? I said, well, let me call you back. I dropped the phone and I call the foreign minister's office.
In Port-au-Prince?
In Port-au-Prince. I found nobody.
Nobody.
I called the prime minister's office. I found nobody. Then I called the palace and I found nobody.
Nobody.
At that point, I called the president's secretary general, who was my friend, on his cell phone. And he picks up. I said, listen, what's going on? Have you talked to the president? He said, no, I haven't talked to anybody. You know what happened. Everybody is out. Everything is crushed. I said, you haven't talked to anyone? He says, no. And the phone went dead. At that point, I'm at the embassy. It's already 5:15, something like that. And I'm saying, what am I going to do? That's when I decided I will tell the history of Haiti to America. And the press started to contact me, and I began to tell the story the way I knew it.
Of course.
One thing happened. during that time that stays with me always. Pat Robertson, a disciple of God, was on Rachel Maddow's broadcast, and he said the earthquake was God's punishment for the pact that Haiti signed with the devil to win its independence. That's God's punishment. I happen to be coming on the air.
Who said this again? Who said that on the
Pat
Rachel?
Robertson.
Pat Robertson himself on the Rachel Maddow show said your country deserved this punishment.
Yes.
This devastation,
the punishment
this death.
Because of the pact that the country signed with the devil to win its independence.
Wow.
You know, Haiti is the first independent nation in the hemisphere after the United States. United States is first, 1776. Yes. Haiti second, 1804. And we beat Napoleon. When I say we, our ancestors beat the strongest army of Europe, the army of Napoleon, to win it. So Pat Robertson, in a way, was saying that God was for the enslavement. God was pro-slavery. So here I'm coming after him on Rachel Maddow's show. And the first question she asked me, I say, forgive me, pardon me, madam. Before I answer your question, I would like to address what I just heard here. Some people don't know the history of their country, because had they known the history of their country, they would have known that the pact that Haiti signed with the devil allowed the United States to get the Louisiana Purchase.
Of course.
Because when we beat the French thought they are going to be beaten, they sold the Louisiana Purchase to the Americans.
Yes, for the money. That's
and
amazing.
Not too many people knew that. So during those days that you say I was the only one speaking for Haiti, I explained the history of Haiti to America.
Gave them, and so everybody would understand and have empathy for the culture.
Yes.
I read on the Wikipedia page, there was a famous moment then where people were stuck at the border between Haiti and the Dominican, right? And no one would let them pass without government approval, but no one could get in touch with your government. How did that go down? What was the story there, real quick?
Well, again, I'm not giving myself any kudos here.
No, however, tell the story, yeah.
However, when the Dominican ambassador in Washington, that I know very well, called me and told me, listen, my friend, we need to open the border, but we cannot find anybody in Haiti. We cannot find the president, we cannot find the prime minister. What are you going to do for us? He said, my foreign minister is in New York. He's on the phone right now. I'm putting him on the phone with you. And the foreign minister asked me, Ambassador, will you sign to open the border? I say, does your ambassador have the document? He says, yes. And I said, send it to me right now. I will sign. I signed the document, and the border was open by 6 p.m. that same day, the 10th of January 2010, the 12th of January 2010.
Basically, you were the government of Haiti for a few days.
For a few days, I was.
You had to call the shots because you were alive and well in Washington trying to help your fellow countrymen.
Yes.
We got to mention your book. You mentioned Stanley Penn, did you not, during this interview? He's kind of a mentor of yours, sir?
Yes, Stanley Penn is a mentor of mine.
When he reviewed your book, he said, Ray Joseph is the voice and conscience of Haiti. He's written a book about his life and about the tragedy that befell Haiti. Nobody can tell the story better than Ray Joseph. Wall Street Journal, For Whom the Dogs Spy. Interesting title, For Whom's the Dogs Spy. Excellent account of the modern political history of one of America's closest neighbors by someone who's lived through it. Please, I've started reading it ever since I was, Ray Carlson from Inland Press Foundation gave me your name. Ray's been great, such a good friend. Matter of fact, he's the one that helped me on 9/11 find a rental car. We drove all over the Chicago area. I gave a speech for him back then. And he said, you've got to talk to Ambassador Joseph. The book, For Whom the Dogs Spy, I am riveted by this. And I think everyone, if you really want to get an idea of what it's like to truly win freedom, can I put it that way? I mean, freedom is hard.
Yes,
democracy
yes,
is not easy to have.
No.
It's
Anyway, that's the reason, the reason I call the book For Whom the Dogs Spy?
No, why? Where does that title mean?
Well, as I told you earlier, Papa Doc Duvalier used the voodoo in Haiti, the voodoo culture, to control the people. He made them think that he's all over the place. Even dogs and cats are spying for him.
Wow.
I'm a social anthropologist, and I learned not to belittle people's beliefs.
Of course.
Whatever their beliefs are, if you want to move them from their beliefs, you have to understand them and talk to them and move them from that. So I knew I couldn't tell Haitians that dogs don't spy, but I knew I could convince them that the dogs have defected. The dogs are no longer spying for Papa Doc Duvalier. They're spying for me. And that's why I told you we had this network that infiltrated everywhere, infiltrated the palace. I told you about the telephones, but beside the telephone, we have actual people who are doing the work for us, and Papa Doc doesn't know. So the dogs and people hearing all these things coming out from New York, they say the dogs are spying for the guys in New York now. By the way, when I got Papa Doc's 2 private secretaries, a woman and a man, to work for me, I knew I had made it.
You made it. Let me ask you, are you bullish and positive about Haiti's future now at the age of 89? Do you feel your work can slow down? You can finally take a break, go play golf, get on a cruise, relax, or is there still more work to be done, Ambassador?
On August 31, coming up, I will be 90 years old.
Yes, sir.
On July 23, the newspaper that we helped establish will be 50 years old.
Yes, sir.
Till today, you talk to people in the Haitian community, that paper remains the voice of freedom because we open our columns to all without ideology. I don't care about their ideology. If they are fighting for freedom, we open the columns to them.
All right, I need to ask you this then, and this may be upset some people. America has gone through 5 years of an interesting time. Let me just say that so I can stay in the center. You are a man who has truly proven himself as knowledgeable of what it takes for a society to be free. What advice do you give American citizens today, if you could get on a pulpit right now and speak to all 300 plus million? Because one of the things I agree with you is how fragile democracy is. It's a hard culture. To have a government of the people, you have to respect someone else's opinion. And that's why I love the way you said, I'm not going to judge my fellow citizens. I'm going to work with them. What advice would you give America through the massive challenges we've gone through recently and how our freedoms have been, how should I say, bended a little? What do you think?
Let me tell you something. When I saw President Trump assume power in this country, and when I saw what he began doing, I began a conversation with a friend. And I know she has kept all the conversations. And I told her, because I know she has lived under some dictatorships, she knows what dictatorships are like. And I told her, you know what? If America does not watch, we will have a Hitler in this place. And that was, I was talking to her, I was writing to her about this during 2018, 2019, and 2020, much more.
All right.
Then I saw what happened on January 6th.
But a good deal of my audience right now is angry at you because of this polarization in our country. Do you not admit at least that our Constitution, this amazingly perfect document written by some very imperfect people, survived this? I mean, it got bended a little, it almost got torn, but the free press remained, did it not? I mean, doesn't it, see, again, I'm putting the perspective as...
But even the free press was threatened.
Of course, threatened, but remained.
Right.
Again, I mean, this is an editor and publisher magazine, 184-year-old Bible of the news publishing industry. This is what this interview, that's the platform you're on. And I looked at that fight and felt proud that the press was able to survive and keep getting, even though there were two sides to it, at least there were two sides. Isn't the first thing that a dictatorship try to do is censor the press, destroy the press, and get one message out, correct?
That's it. And that's what happened in my country. Under Duvalier. And that's why we lost our brain power. 80% of our intellectuals and professionals left the country. And that's why Haiti is in the state it is today.
Because they all left.
Now we have a president, Jovenel Moïse, who is trying to take the country back to the days of the Duvaliers. And here
we are.
I am again. The paper is again on the...
You answered my question.
In the trenches, fighting this new dictatorship developing. We are making some headways because the international community did not want to see what was happening. Now, most countries, the State Department, the European Union, even the United Nations are against what this new president is trying to do, to change the constitution by having his own. He said he's not changing it. He says, I'm coming with a new constitution. But if you look in the new constitution, the president is powerful. The Senate is no longer in existence. The prime minister that was put up after 1986 when Duvalier left, so it can balance the president, is no longer there in this new constitution. Moreover, the new constitution just absolves the president and his friends for any wrongdoing that happened under the administration.
So again,
constitutionally now, they are going to support a dictatorship. So we are asking the international community that this June 27th, no referendum should go through, because the people of Haiti have stood up against it. And they are fighting with us also. When the committees of the president goes around to try to set up local committees for the referendum, the people rush them out of town. So that's why we are now.
This is an amazing story. I urge our audience, first of all, please find the Haiti Observateur. You can either go to the website.ca if you spell it properly, or you can simply go to Google. I found it instantly, and it was a wonderful read. And please, if you do have interest, the book is called For Whom, again, Whom the Dog Spies. Do I have that correct, sir?
You have
Amazon,
it correct.
it's everywhere. Just
you have
Google.
it correct.
And Ambassador Joseph, you answered my question. Your mission is not over. You're going to have to stay with us for another decade, because we need your voice, I guess, in our
let me
society.
tell you one thing. My wife says she is preparing a special birthday party on my 100th anniversary.
May I come, please?
I put your name on the list. I talked to her about you already, and I put your name on the list.
I am looking forward to sharing a glass of champagne with you. Ambassador Joseph, thank you for your valuable time. Thank you for your work, and thank you for your commitment to free journalism. We appreciate you, and this will not be our last interview, sir. Just stay healthy and be with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.